Well, we are back. Let's turn that back to where we belong. As it seems to be the norm, I am doing my best to get things a little bit more organized. Good luck with that. And let's see who comes in today. So I am live at this point. Okay. Anyway, with that being said, in about 10 minutes, I will be. Then we'll start the show. Until then, I just putter around. Just trying to make sure I've got things handy that I require. Which, by the look of it, I do. At least I'm hoping. Let me see here. Get that. Okay, that goes over there because I don't need it in the way. And yeah, it does seem that we're working on it. But where is? Because this should come up under my email. At least that's where it seems to have come up the last time. What do we got here? Oh, here we go. YouTube, there we are. Now, the theory is this should take me right to it. Hey, hot dang, would you look at that? It brought me directly up. Hey, hot dang, would you look at that? Okay. And now I've got the video feed. And yep, we are up and running. Hey, and the first out of the block here is Chris. Good evening, Chris. Glad you joined us. Let's kill this off. What do we got? Okay, I do not need that. There we go. Just killed the feed off the site itself, so I don't have it echoing all the time. Things yesterday was an absolute write-off, Chris. I managed to get things organized, but I'll tell you, talk about wiping myself out. 17 hours of reorganizing my entire house. But it boiled down to a real simple issue of striving to make certain that I got things moving in the right direction. Still got some interesting problems where it comes to the live feed here that I'm going to have to sort out because I didn't get a chance to this week. Tried to, but it didn't work out quite that way. But we will be going live now. Well, obviously I'm already live, but the announcement goes out pretty quick as far as the rest of the people go. So we'll see if we can beat the last one. I'm streaming right off of YouTube. The issue from that end was there was less to try and set up. Like I went and set up, Buy Me a Coffee. Only I think I set it up funny. It's collecting, but I have no idea how to get at it because I think I set it up wrong. And I'm going to have to go back in and sort that out. YJ, welcome to the party here. I'm presuming Astara is another name for Easter. But we'll go with without understanding that necessarily, we'll call it Happy Astara to you as well. Hopefully we pronounced that right. But one step at a time, we're trying to figure things out. Technology and I have never gotten along well. However, the techniques that I've been working with, as far as making certain that the tools I'm talking about actually work, the one step at a time method worked like an absolute charm yesterday. Got everything done that I had to. The unfortunate part was I pushed it too far. Now, it was neat yesterday. There we go. Thank you so much for the claim. YJ has just answered the question here. She says that Astra is the pre-Christianity equivalent of Easter. It's like the pagan seasonal start of spring. I like that. especially when you think the 3/4 of the holidays that I grew up with, because I grew up Christian. You know, so do I believe in God? Do I believe in Jesus? Absolutely. However, I've always held that much as I believe in them, they're not the top of the totem pole, and they certainly were not they were certainly not the first religion that came out. Okay, I do like, oddly enough, I've always held that when you take a look at that whole genre, that whole side of things, right, that there were way too many holes in it that just didn't add up. Even at 6 years old, I was questioning it. But no, yesterday I spent 17 hours correcting the flow of energy in my house. Today, I spent most of the time sleeping because, well, let's face it, I don't think I've worked 17 hours back to back in the last 30 years. But we're in, sadly here, in Kelowna, it's the same time of year, right? We're in late April at this point. And about a week ago, we ended up with snow. Now, I'm not entirely certain, but I think somebody really messed up on the weather alignment there. Okay. Yeah, the funny thing there, Chris, if you're working overnights, I years ago, I worked 2 years straight on the midnight run. And because of the way that my body works, I'd only get 2 hours of sleep a night. And I did that for 2 years. I was fine, in one sense. On the other hand, it does have its drawbacks, and that will absolutely, one of them is trying to catch up on your sleep. That's definitely one of the big issues. But no, the funny thing is, when you take a look at it, where I keep looking at things, is, the reality is that it doesn't matter where people come from. It doesn't matter there at all. Okay. People are people all the way across the board. Doesn't make any difference what kind of a background you've got, what your nationality is, what your religious or spiritual belief structure is. The reality of it is that everybody is starting in exactly the same place. Okay. We are literally starting right here, right now. Even if, like I was, you were a professional procrastinator. Okay, when you get around to doing it, postpone doing whatever for a week or two, right? When you finally get around to it, you're right here. It's right in the now that you're able to do anything. That's where it gets to be interestingly complicated. I mean, I know this morning, well, I woke up this morning, I think 3 times, primarily because of the fact that, well, I threw my sleep off when I was working that long. But I managed to get, at this point, the bedroom and the furniture out of the bedroom that needed to go. I got rid of the entertainment center that was really darkening the living room. Right, got the hallways all sorted out. And now it's just a question of making things happen. Of course, during the show yesterday, I was planning on talking about the balance point between the different races, right? Between all races, human, alien, the ancient races. Only the way the conversation went yesterday, because as is my normal way of looking at things, I take a look at the questions people bring in, right? Or at least I do my best to. Oh, look at that. We have munchkins running outside our window. I do my best to take into consideration questions that are coming up. Well, yesterday, pretty much the whole show turned to the idea of the material world, of how to handle finances, how to make them work. Now, am I a professional financial advisor? Not at all. Okay. But the reality of it is, I've been through my own set of ringers and have gone from bankruptcy to debt-free. Right, completely. Finally got all income tax worked out. And a lot of the question that people run into, and when I talk about people, I mean, I get this from every race I deal with. How do you change the way your world is running, especially if everybody in your world is going the other direction? Now, a friend of mine decades back made a comment, and he literally said, where it came to that kind of behavior, he literally goes, "Dead fish don't swim upstream." And I mean, it's an odd way of putting it, but it's very true. If you just go with the flow, like so many of us are encouraged to do, what ends up happening is you get exactly where everybody else is getting to. Okay, I could have chosen to go that route. Do what everybody's talking about, do what everybody's been doing, continue doing the exact same thing I've been doing all along, and ended up in the same place. But I tell you, the sense of accomplishment, when you take a look at the state your house is in, and you clear the clutter out of the way, what ends up happening is you get a real sense of accomplishment, a real sense of acquisition. All of a sudden, you've got this freedom, this ability to do and to see much more clearly. And that's what this whole issue is about. Now, I'm going to pose this. I'm going to pose this question to throughout the night. Where it comes to my YouTube, in order to let people know it's coming, right? I came up with a name. I called it The Journey. Okay. With this live feed, I'm still working on what name I should run with, and I'm quite open to suggestions. Okay, but the idea is to show people that regarding, like, it's still in link with getting people working together. But in this case, it's a question of letting people know or getting people to understand that we are literally trying here to remember who we are, as in pull back all the bits and pieces, every memory that you've got, whether it's a past life, a modern experience, a thought process. It's a pretty widely accepted fact, or at least perception, that humans have a certain amount of life, but their physical body, much as it will pass away, it's a pretty widely accepted idea that the soul carries on. Okay, now if that's the case, I always liken the situation to having a car. Your body is your car, and sooner or later that car will tank out. So when it does, you walk around for a little bit, and then you go and pick another vehicle out with all its own little abilities, all its own little strengths, whatever quirks come with it, and you carry on. Well, in much the same way, when that happens, you don't forget what you did or how you drove or what experiences you had in your last car, right? And you carry on, you take that information forward. Now, this was reinforced when I was learning astrology. And the way a natal chart was put to me is that the natal chart is literally a report card from your last life. That's all it was. Okay, now I'm looking at this, and this is great. I'm seeing let me put it this way. There's 3 people I'm seeing in the chat room, but according to the markers here, we're already up to 7. Okay, which is fantastic, because I'm, in all fairness, if I have too much going on, I'm not going to be able to track it anyway. But we're up to, we've got 6. And that'll fluctuate. I could give you a play-by-play, but we're not going to. But when you take a look at your memories, many people question, are past lives real? Okay, or could it be, could I have been an alien in a past life? And the answer is absolutely. Welcome aboard, Robert. Robert's just joined us in the chat room here. I look at this situation and, can you be something else? Could you have come from a lifetime as an alien? Absolutely. Okay, now, in my opinion, this is simply my opinion. I'm not here to prove it. right? Because quite frankly, I like the way it was put one day, right? That for those who believe, no proof is necessary. For those who don't believe, no proof may be possible. Now, this applies to the whole 9 yards of whether we're talking aliens, whether we're talking religion, belief in God, it doesn't matter. Your belief is your belief. I'm not here to tell you whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. But I know I'm going to run into snags sooner or later. We're going to get people in the chat room here that are problematic. And I don't know at this point how to solve that problem. That's one of those things I'm going to have to piece together because I know it's going to happen sooner or later. And I'm just not the one issue. Can we try one thought at a time? What do you think? One issue that I run into a real snag with is I don't tolerate bullying around me. I remember sitting in a restaurant one day. Okay, now it was a licensed restaurant. And there was this massive man. I mean, he was built like a freight train. And he's sitting there with his girlfriend, who, quite frankly, was a quarter his size, I'm sure of it. He had to be over 6 feet, and if she broke 5, that was tall. But he was drinking too much, and he turns around because she made the comment. I could hear her clearly. And she makes this comment that she thought he'd had enough to drink. Well, he immediately started in on her, berating her, and then he made the comment that set me off. He looks at her and he goes, "You're the one forcing me to drink." Right. And he tears a strip off her, and you can tell she's feeling smaller and smaller. And I reached a point and I just looked at him and I says, "Excuse me, sir. Are you trying to tell me that you at your size, was held down and this young lass poured a bottle of alcohol into your mouth?" Okay. And he looks at me. Of course, everything all of a sudden went silent. And he looks at me and he goes, "Well, no, that would be stupid." I says, "Well, in all fairness, what you're telling everybody in the restaurant here is that is literally what has happened because she forced you to drink. The only way she could force you to drink, if you think about it, would be if she held you down. And somehow I don't think that was possible. I didn't think so anyway. Now," I says, she may well be a frustrating person to be around. She seems nice enough, but Lord knows that can change in a heartbeat in private. Okay, so she may well be a major contributor to your stress. But to blame her for you upending a bottle in your own mouth seems a little out of sorts, because either you're blaming her for something you know you're responsible for, or you're an awful pile weaker than what you look. Okay, and she subsequently is an awful pile stronger. I says, it's your pick. But I would suggest taking responsibility for your own drinking tendencies. Now, bear in mind, I used to drink a 26er a night. Right. And I wouldn't even blink about it. I'd drink whatever was available. And quite frankly, I used to mix and match. I think the worst mix and match I ever did was pouring my own rum and Coke. 80-20 mix, and it was not in favor of the Coke. But one of the biggest tricks in getting ahead in life is really acknowledging where your own shortfalls are. Okay, and making absolutely certain that you know what you're responsible for, what you've got control over. The reality is you cannot control what other people think. You cannot control what they do, at least not in most cases. Now, the intriguing part about it is that when we look at off-worlders, they have the same issue. They cannot control how people are going to respond. They cannot control how people are going to act. The only thing you've got, the only thing anybody has control over is how you respond to somebody else's responses. Yeah, I agree with you. The funny thing there, Chris, is I used to drink a 26er a night. I now drink 2, maybe 3 drinks in a year. Okay, not because of the fact that it hits me differently. just because I don't have the drive in this case. Right. Now, coffee, on the other hand, I drink that like there's no tomorrow. I probably go through 3 or 4 pots a day without even blinking. But I drink very weak coffee. But we have to look in the mirror and go, okay, what are we here for? When you take a look at, the one thing that happens here is when we take a look at the whole issue. And Chad has just joined the party here. That's one of those fun jobs. Chad just goes, he says, I'm here listing at work while I pull labels off toast in a bolt factory. That's one of those jobs that if you don't pay attention to it, you lose a finger, right? Or get hurt in one fashion or another. But it's also I'm pretty certain if it's anything like when I was emptying boxes out, it's pretty much a routine thing. You keep an eye on it, right? And now we have the people filtering in. Dogface Boy has just come in. Okay, welcome, Dogface Boy. Glad you made it. The thing we have to look at is when we start looking at the different races, the first thing that people have to realize is that, who do we got? Nightmare has just joined us. Greetings, Nightmare. We have to take a look at what is going on. Okay. No, yeah. Chad goes, I thought you were an EMT. No, my father was an EMT. My father was actually search and rescue. Myself, I'm just a medical anomaly. But do I know how to do, I've never been trained in emergency response. On the other hand, the doctors haven't been taught how to deal with my medical predicament. But what you have to look at is when we look at humans, people say, well, why don't aliens reveal themselves? Why aren't the ancient races more visible to us? Well, if you think about it, humans have a brilliant idea. Okay. Humans have a brilliant idea. If you're a different skin color, you're a different race. And as it turns out, I did some research. Apparently you are, but you are still the same species. Okay. You are still the same species. And people have to realize a different skin color or a different gender does not make anybody worth less than the next. Neither does the amount of money coming in. Okay, these are all differentiators. It's absolutely the same as hair color. Does not change the person. Okay. Now, I'm going to address that little issue right away because people have told me all my life, clothes make the person. But I want you to think about the rationality behind that. If, in fact, clothes make the person and they govern what people, if they govern what people are behaving like, that came out well. If you take a look at it and go, clothes make the person, they govern how the person behaves. If that were the case, would not it stand to reason that everybody in the military behaved exactly the same way? Everybody in a private school would behave exactly the same way, and everybody that put on a police officer's uniform, a postal uniform, or any uniform that is designated for that company, would it not stand to reason that if clothes made the person, that this would mean that people wearing that uniform would behave the same way? Or for that matter, everybody in a suit. Now, I will grant you this. The way you dress will absolutely affect the way other people perceive you and may well affect the way you carry yourself. Don't believe me? Try it out. Don't just take my word for it. But if you want to give it a real test, dress in just whatever type of clothes you want, your casual clothes, however you want, and go out in public. Okay, and see the way people look at you. See the way people pay attention to you or don't. On another day, get dressed right to the nines, and walk outside, okay, and see the way people treat you. Okay, now I found out the hard way. The same applies to if you're arriving in a hotel in a cab as compared to arriving by limo. You get a different treatment. Okay, yeah, dog. Well, yeah, that'll go over well. Some of the comments that come up in the chat room are just priceless. Dog voice boy and dog face boy goes, go out with no pants and see how they treat you. I saw another post along that line just the other day. I was stopped by the police. And I got stopped by the police, and it turns out, and the police officer looks at me and goes, "Look, if you want to walk around with no clothes on, that around the house with no clothes on, that's fine, but do so inside." Apparently, and she goes on to say, apparently you have to be inside the house to walk around it with no clothes. Which personally I can understand that all too well. But the reality, yes, you're absolutely right, Chris. There is a really good crowd here, and it is my hope that this crowd gets bigger and better as we go along. And thank you for bearing with me, because I'll tell you, it's a stumble job right from the get-go. And this is just something that takes time to grow, to get along, takes time to grow. And we just have to, from my standpoint, I'm not going anywhere. Now, knowing me, I may run into a snag down the road called having a heart attack or some point, at which point I won't broadcast. One of the things that keeps me focused at this point is I knew I had to get some sleep today because of yesterday, or I was going to be a complete wreck for tonight. And considering I'm just getting off the ground, I figured it was one of these things that I best get an idea. But these are the only 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, are the only 2 days that I know I've got a certain amount of time that I'll be available for. So I figure I'll do it that way, and the rest of the time I'll carry on with the other videos, because finding a 2-hour block can be really problematic. Most of the time, for instance, if I'm working on my books, and this is something I was showing somebody yesterday. Actually, that was a neat thing. We can see how my mind's working. Yesterday, when I was doing the post in the morning, right? I just got these. Is that, yeah? Just got a reprinting of these out. Ended up selling a couple books. One of them being this. This is Believe in Yourself and Follow Your Dreams. The backbone of what put me on track, right? And I mean, ideally, what I'm looking at down the road is making enough of an income from the books, from the writing, to be able to actually move forward, to replace my current income. Because it's a real interesting setup for me. I never have been one to really socialize a lot. Even when I was drinking, I'd go into the bar and I'd pick one spot in the bar, usually right next to the cashier's spot. And that was the table I stayed at. I virtually never moved. Because, well, let's face it, with a bad leg, you just don't dance much. Right. But it gave me an opportunity to watch the rest of the bar while I was still out in public. Nowadays, I still, to this day, if I go into a restaurant, I will put my back to the wall, because it's kept me out of a lot of troubles and it lets me see what's going on. But, and it is right there. This little book, this is just a notebook, but this is what I do my writing in, where it comes to the stories and the storylines I come up with. Because I'm still old school. I still prefer working with pen and paper, but I transferred on the computer to make sure that I've still got it. It's easier to edit on paper, I'll tell you. A lot easier. When I was typing it on an old typewriter, on the old manual ones, okay, when I was doing that, if I made a mistake, I'd have to go back and type the entire page over. So you can see how you end up with stacks of paper all saying the same thing. Because I had like 13, 14 recopies of it with the computer. I can go through it and make a change, and that's all it is. Right. But I mean the process of eliminating the back copies I've got even of that. But where we have to start, when you start looking at getting your world running right, and we look at the different races, it applies to everybody. Oddly enough, this means it also applies to cats, dogs, elm trees, oak trees, the fish, all races, ancient races, the off-worlders. Everybody has the same issue. Yeah, I tried that one day, Robert. It didn't work well. Robert says no whiteout on the screen needed. Yeah, I made that mistake once. I also found, by the way, if you're drinking coffee and you end up sneezing, and it hits the screen, it makes a mess of trying to read it. Or for that matter, if you end up spilling your pop or your beer, it's an absolute disaster. The nice part about it is, in most cases, if you're working on a computer and you spill your coffee on the table, most of the time you miss the computer and all you got is a mess, but the computer still works. Okay, if you spill your coffee on a stack of written paper, it just absolutely decimates it. But it's a question of taking a look in the mirror and going, am I content with me? Every single race I've ever run across has the same problem. They all look at the situation and go, am I content with me? And, if they were any more evolved, people go, oh, they're aliens. They're so much more evolved above us. Materially speaking, where it comes to their actual physical toys, certainly they are head and shoulders ahead of us. But there are races out there that are absolutely mind-bogglingly close-minded. They are so caught up in the idea of xenophobia that they make humans look positively welcoming. Okay. And, the reality is, if these other races were interested in wiping out Earth and invading Earth, people wouldn't know about it. It really boils down to an issue of this. You focus on what you desire. I follow 3 laws. Be true to yourself first. Do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Energy out, energy in. And if you follow those 3 laws, and by all means, compare them to whatever laws you're following. I tell the same thing to the other races. Like I've got friends that are literally, physically, in excess of a million years old. That's because their race lives longer. Okay. It doesn't necessarily mean that the older you get, the wiser you get. Because I will tell you, some of these people they still haven't got it together. And this is the funny part. People go, well, we're afraid of aliens. Aliens and ancient races are far more fearful of humans than humans are of them. And I know that's hard to believe when you think of the level of technology that we've got, or lack thereof, and you look at the amount of infighting. There are things going on in the world today that you look at them, and I just look at them going, did you even think about that before you said it? I mean, I do the same thing. I never question, am I going to put my foot in my mouth? I question how I'm going to get the other one in there beside it. And just a point in fact, I've got to remember to point this out as I go along throughout the night. When you have a question, absolutely, if you've got a question that you'd like me to answer in any field, make sure you put it on, that you print it in the chat room in all caps. That way, at least I can find it. Now, I'm not guaranteeing I'll hit all of them. As a matter of fact, depending on how fast they come in, I may or may not miss some. and we'll figure that one out as we go along. But if you've got a question that you don't desire to ask in the chat room, if you don't desire me to answer it in public, as it were, okay, below all of my videos, there are all sorts of ways of contacting me. Okay, I forgot to check, I should have, whether or not underneath this video, whether or not there is a list of the videos. But that being said, maybe I can find it here while I'm at it. What do we got here? If we go to, I'm sitting in my office right now, obviously, and just taking a look. That is not what I wanted. Thank you very much. Yeah, now we dug ourselves into a bit of a crater. Let's go to home and see what that does. Trying to find our way around places is always fun. I probably shouldn't be trying to do that while I'm here. But, I've been known to do dumber things. And, yeah, that's not necessarily working the way I'd like. Let's see what we got here. Okay, nope, that won't do it. Okay, well, I'm done looking around for it because I can't find what I'm looking for. And since I can't, that's okay. Oh, that's because I missed that button. See, the silly part is, do I know how I think? I picked up a few. Chris Holm. Chris is asking if I've got any new figures out. And I'm going to have to stand up for this one. Because, where did it go? There's the one. Don't mind me, the office isn't really that big. Want this one, but there's another one that I just picked up very similar to it. There it is. Okay. Just had to get up to move around to do that. Now, this is a treant. Now, this is the one, this is an older one. Okay. And the neat part about this, okay, now, according to D&D, this is a treant. According to reality, from my understanding, from my experience, this is a perfect rendition of an Arborian. Now, with that in mind, there's a video I saw the other day on YouTube that shows Arborians literally moving probably 20 to 30 feet in a matter of seconds, which gives you an idea. And it literally was caught by drone by showing a bunch of trees moving back and forth at least a good 20 to 30 feet without any problem at all. Now, I only had the one, and I was looking for others. So I found one the other day, right? And this is the way they start. Okay. So now I'm going to be going through and painting this one off. But now I've got two different ones, and I'll keep an eye out because I'd like more than one. I'd like a couple more because they help me with writing as well. Okay. And then, of course, we got this one here, which is a smaller version of the same thing. Okay, this is also, as far as my world goes, this would also be classified as an Arborian. It's another plant animal, okay, or plant creature that is just smaller. Because if you compare it, now bear in mind, these figures that I paint are calculated at 1 inch every 6 feet. So if you take, let's see if I've got one within reach. Figures. You'd ask a question like that. That's always fun. Here we are. Okay. Now we're done running around. This would be a standard-sized human. Okay, so there's a 6-foot person. Right? And if we hold it this way, okay, as you can see, I've started painting him. Then we have this little Arborian. Okay, and you can see the size of them comparatively. And that's a smaller Arborian. Of course, if we take a human and we put it next to a full-sized Arborian. Now, can you picture that walking down the street? This is why aliens and ancient races don't turn around and show themselves in public. You know, the array that I've got of them, you were asking if I picked up new. I picked up a whole bunch of new ones. Right. And some of them are within range. Like these little guys. And again, I've seen, I don't know what they, I don't recall. This is a beautiful rendition. Most of the figures that you see, most of the mythological creatures, many of the creatures you see on horror shows, you know, on science fiction shows, many of them are very real. Okay. So, I mean, you take a look at this. Now, you think of a human walking down the street, and then you picture a creature, and I've seen creatures like this, by the way. I've seen people like this. But take a look at how that would, how you would feel. Would that be somewhat intimidating to see a creature like, you know, an individual that looks like this coming up against you? Okay. Now, don't get me wrong. I've always held that my life is more like science fiction than anything else. Yeah, in answer to that, dog boy, you know, dog face, I do. I paint these things on my own with a toothpick, many with small paintbrushes or a toothpick, depending. Okay, where are we sitting? Yeah, I'll go grab that one for you. You know, this is just another one of the, and again, they start off this color, right? They start off that color, and then they end up whatever color I decide on. But they're all painted like the bigger sections. I paint with with a small paintbrush. But when I start dealing with things like the mouth, you know, when I start dealing with things like the mouth or like the eyes, those are done with toothpicks. And of course, when we take a look at this guy here, okay, most of this is being done with a toothpick. Now, the neat part here, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Okay, but right now my hands are steady. A few years back, I had to give up painting because my hands started shaking so badly that I could not actually paint them. I couldn't pick up a sheet of paper. Now, I'm going to take just to see. Well, if I hold this right now, you can see it relatively solidly. But my hands used to shake like this. Okay, and this was just normal. Right now, I have to focus to make that happen. Right, but it used to be that way all the time. You can picture how well that worked. Okay, this is something the doctors figured I was completely hooped. That's why I started learning to write with my left hand. Right, because I couldn't hang on to a pen with my right one. But I was told I would have that problem for life. Again, they were wrong. Okay, now I've got a slightly different problem. I had a stroke and my left hand doesn't work quite right. But I'm working on that as well. But remember, what we're talking about is remembering how to do things, you know, how to put yourself back together. I am a firm believer that whatever your situation, whatever you're going through, most of it can be repaired by your own body. Now, don't get me wrong. Okay. In most people's cases, you go to a doctor. Like when I snapped my arm, I went to a doctor to get a surgeon to actually put it back together. I would not wanted to have had to do that without backup. Many of the people I know rely on the doctors. A lot of the people I know, quite frankly, rely on what humans call veterinarians. Okay, they're either called veterinarians or xenozoologists. Okay, because they aren't standard human. Of course, in all fairness, standard humans don't have tails and furs. You know, tails and fur. But that doesn't make them any less important than the next person to them. Okay, and we have to realize that if you desire your world to change properly, getting a handle on your responsibility to whatever is going on is the key to it. Now, I've got the figures I work with. Okay. I end up working with them because some of them I'll sort out, and I will, as a matter of fact, I'm going to do it this way because just in case this comes up again, I'm just going to make a note for myself. What is next week? 17th, probably the 24th. Yeah, it'll be the 23rd and 24th. What I came to the conclusion of, because I've got people on both sides of the world, is it's easier to plan by the week what I'm looking at than by the day. Okay. But next weekend I will have more of the figures out because they tie into what I read to the writing I'm doing. Okay. So it is for the 24th. I'm just making a note to make sure I have it. But I take a look at these figures. Yes, they're a hobby unto themselves. Okay, and I can quite literally get lost painting for hours, much like I can get lost writing for hours. And in all fairness, I can get lost pretty much anyway. You know, it's like I've told people, I have a sense of direction that is second to none. Quite seriously, what I mean by that is I have never seen anybody with one worse. Now, my father, on the other hand, you could drop him in the middle of nowhere and he would immediately turn around and head for where he was aiming. You know, in my case, I know where I'm going. I go forward. Can never figure out where I'm heading, but that's where I'm going. Okay, but when we start looking at the different other people, understand you've got a situation that may be complicated. Okay, you may be going through an absolutely horrendous situation, really stressful. Okay, but to other people it may seem very mild. This is especially true if you've ever dealt with children. Okay, the problem that a 6-year-old goes through trying to make up their mind for something is just as traumatic to them as what an adult goes through trying to figure out which career they want to go into next. Now, it's neat. I've seen some, you take a look at some civilizations, even in today's world, where they go, okay, you're born, this is what you're going to do. Now, I do agree it works to some degree, especially if people have trouble making up their own mind. I might want to speak a little slower because I'm tripping over my words. If you have trouble making up your own mind, and we'll get to that in just 10 seconds, then sometimes a society that says, this is what you're doing for a living, works. The problem is that people are individuals, and there will come a point, even if you're raised to believe that's the path you're supposed to go. Okay. If that's what you're taught, if you're taught that that's the direction you're supposed to go, there is this part of you that's going to go, that doesn't ring right. And you're going to buck the system. Net result, you have chaos. Okay, at least in your life. Now, I cannot encourage you enough to follow one particular line of thought. And that falls under the second karmic law. Okay, do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Now, the breakdown of that is this. You must follow the laws of the land in which you are. Now, this applies across the board, no matter who you are, no matter what your age bracket, no matter what your race. If you're going to set rules in your own home, the easiest way to put it is this. You make the laws. If you're the one that is paying the rent or the mortgage, you're the one making the rules. The people there don't necessarily, they may not agree with them, but as long as those laws do not contravene the laws of the community around you, you're good to go make them. Okay. Welcome, Carl. An obvious addition to this, an obvious extension of this is if in your house, let's say in society, it's illegal to smoke. Okay. Then you cannot in your house tell people Yes, I live in this community. It's illegal to smoke in the community. But in my home, you're allowed to smoke. You cannot do that because it contravenes the law of the community. Conversely, if it is legal to smoke anywhere in the community, you can in your home go, no, in my house you cannot smoke, because it does not contravene the law of the community. It simply says in your house, you're not saying you can do something in your house that you can't do in community. You're saying, yeah, if you want to do it in the community, go out there. Okay, very important to keep that in mind. Now, of course, I'm sure that we will end up with children listening to this periodically, and this message is more specifically for them. If you don't agree with your parents' laws, well, unfortunately, the problem is you're stuck with them unless you're not living there. Now, I strongly recommend that while you're a child, you stay living in that environment, unless it's abusive, at which point there's a whole other series of problems. But the reason for rules, as long as laws are made that apply to everybody, regardless of income, regardless of station or gender, if they apply the same, the society will be stable. Now, I was actually asked yesterday, I think, if I know of any society where they actually attained that, and the answer is yes. I know of one society where they pulled it off and still live by it to this day, and that's the Mobians. Okay, surprisingly enough, they live on a planet called Mobius. That happens to be a planet in absolute balance with Earth. It was quite literally built that way, but it is a planet that is in the exact same orbit, speed, the whole 9 yards, as Earth is. Okay, but it's on the other side of the sun. So no, from Earth you will never see Mobius. You will, if you're lucky, see a Mobian starship. Okay. And quite frankly, I saw one here. It'd be about 20 years ago I spotted one. Okay, it was fantastic because from my standpoint, I knew what it was. Right. And I'm looking at it going, okay. And I asked the gentleman, I looked at the sky, and I pointed up, I says, what is that? And the guy looks at me and he goes, well, I can see it. I said, that's a good place to start for me. So he went through the whole 9 yards, and we came to the conclusion that he didn't know what it was either, but he knew it was not. It was an airplane, an ultralight, a hot air balloon, a sky, a sky, what do they call it? Draw a complete blank on that word. Jumping hang glider. There we go. It was none of the traditional things, but it was there. And when we're taking a look at it, you got to realize, my father used to say, put it this way, it's a bad day if you can't learn something new. Or if everybody was the same, it would be a very boring place. So it takes all kinds of people. Now, I was talking to somebody the other day that has a job that I used to think about doing until it dawned on me. Well, to be blunt, he's a trucker, right? Fabulous gentleman. But, I used to dream of being a trucker, right? And then dawned on me, well, that's not going to work well. I get lost way too quick. And then, of course, when I had the accident, that destroyed that altogether. Okay, because from my standpoint, it really boiled down to an issue of I put too much pressure on my leg, and I'm going to dislocate it. It's just going to be that quick. Greetings, Angel's Life. Actually, my apologies. I have said that so wrong so often. Their name is actually Angels Are Life. And just to put that in perspective, okay, there is an interesting, and I've got them over here. Actually, I've done that once already, so I might as well do it now. If we go over here, where are we here? Not even these. This is what I was talking about the other day with these figures. These up here You buy mushrooms in tins like these. They work beautifully for sorting. But what I got it out for was this. Show you the human again here. This is a standard human, a standard size human. Okay. And then we take a look at the Angolas. Okay. The Angolas, as you can see, are a slightly larger race. Okay. But look at the wingspan on them. Now, are these people real? Have people run into Angolas? The answer is yes. Okay. Very passionate people, but kind of locked in their ways in a lot of cases. Don't think I've got one. See, there's two different types of Angolas. You've got your white-winged, your black. Well, technically, there's three: the white-winged, the black-winged, and then you've got grays. Well, the whites are your healers. The black ones are your warrior races, the warrior class. And then you've got the grays, and those are the ones that mix between the two. Okay. But when you start taking a look, very much, the neat thing there, like Carl's going, like Greek mythology, and the answer is yes. Greek mythology, Norse mythology, Roman mythology, all had very much the same groups of people. Now, the neat part about it is when we start talking about the ancient gods, there's a neat little problem that happens. You had these gods that were here, and then all of a sudden, it seemed like almost overnight they went away. Well, this is what they don't tell you in the old mythologies. The Norse gods themselves were, or more to the point, are off-worlders. Okay, but what happened was mankind had already developed their own religions, their own spiritual belief structure. So when the Nordics arrived, the Nordics came in, and people like Odin, people like Thor and Freya, when they showed up, and they showed what they could do. Okay, all of a sudden humans turned around and went, "Oh my gosh, you're gods!" And they started worshiping them. And they started praying to them. And the Nords, in their almighty wisdom, went, "Hey, this is a bonus. They're bringing us all this stuff." And don't kid yourself, Nords have egos, pretty close to what humans have. So when the humans said, "Hey, you're gods, and we're going to worship you. Tell us what we need to do to make our life better," the Nords were in it like white on rice. They jumped and they stepped up to the plate and they went, "Yes, that is the way it is." And they came up with it and they told people we live on Mount Olympus. Now, the reality is, do they live on Mount Olympus? Yeah. Okay, they do. Problem is, Mount Olympus was not on Earth. Okay, but their home was, because they had the ability to come and go, it was quite easy for them. So they lived for literally centuries with humans worshiping them and bowing down to them. Even people like Ra fell into this. Okay, where you take these races that came in. Now, do not kid yourself. I'm going to throw a loop in here. What people came to understand as God, as the creator of all, okay, that God is real. Okay, in my opinion, and primarily my opinion, stems from the fact I've met him. Okay, but these Nords came in, okay, and they went, "Okay, you're going to call us gods. We're going to capitalize on this," and they carried themselves as gods. Okay, did some of them have the capacity to amplify their size, to grow to phenomenal sizes? The answer is yes. Okay, and that's simply done by a mental process of expanding the molecules between your system to fill it out. Okay, can I do that? No, sorry, it doesn't work that way for me. Okay, but the Nords came in and created this whole situation of going, "Okay, you want to call us gods? That's fantastic." Okay, You call us gods. We're gonna be your gods, and we'll just accept the adulation. And rest assured, they love the idea. The Nordics love the idea of being looked up to, put on pedestals, this sort of thing. Problem arose when the Galactic Consortium came into town, because here's where things get screwy. The Norse gods and all the gods were there complete, and everybody was looking at them going, "You're all gods." And then almost overnight, they were gone. And of course, the question is, why did all of a sudden all these gods vanish? And it was almost like, some massive illness hit or something to that effect. Well, the effect was the Galactic Consortium came into the area, and they went, "Nords, what, pray tell, are you doing? You're not gods. Yes, you're more technologically and metaphysically enhanced than humans are, but humans are children and babies. Okay, your kids looked into their parents as superior beings, but that's because they're children. These are humans. These are the caretakers. They are the primary. They are the most technologically advanced, dominant, surface-dwelling dominant race on this planet. Therefore, they are the caretakers, not you. You are not their god. If you desire to inspire them, absolutely. But you are no longer sticking around and determining when they fight each other, who they fight, who they like. You're not doing that. It's like, and the consortium stood up and said, "Look, you guys have a feud amongst yourselves. Go and fight it out yourselves. You're going to quit using humans as pawns." Okay. So all of a sudden, the Nords pulled away. Now the Nords are still around. Okay. And the ones that called themselves the gods, or that people called the gods, people like Thor, Loki. You can take a look at, and what did that just do? I don't know what that did because I missed it. I had a notice show up here, and I'm not sure what it was. They said, "Look, you're no longer going to stick around. People will probably continue worshiping. From what we've seen, you've got statues built in your honor, and that's fine. Okay, if they want to worship a statue, that's up to them. But you're not going to stick around and continue reinforcing this. Okay, it's just no longer going to work that way." Net result, the Nords pulled out of the equation. When that happened, you ended up with the Egyptian gods getting told the same thing at different points. This is what's happened: is the consortium comes in and goes, "You're overstepping your own boundaries," because the one thing that the off-worlders are adamant of is they are not going to take over this place either by infiltrating the religious sector, the political sector, or the societal sector. They are not permitted to do it. Okay. So all of a sudden, all these gods vanished, and we're left standing here going, "Well, we're used to worshiping gods. We're used to worshiping these higher beings." Now, it gets a little screwy when you start looking at the idea, and as I've already mentioned, do I believe wholeheartedly in God? The answer is yes, in what you would consider God. In the beginning of it all. Do I believe in him? Absolutely. However, do I believe he's the top of the totem pole? Not a prayer. Especially not after the conversation I had with him. Okay. Same applies to Gaia, or who I know as Itza. Okay. And the neat part is, when I start looking at these, okay, now that's the first book. That's the Birth of the Wolf Pack. In this series, I will be covering things like how do past lives work? What is a soulmate? That gets covered in the earlier books. Okay, well, more to the point in the later books in a way, because the Birth of the Wolf Pack is actually the 10th book in a series of 12. The 10th and 11th are already out and available on Amazon. Every book I've written is available directly through me. But the first book in the series which, if everything goes well, will be coming out the end of next year. Okay, but that'll be the start of another trilogy, because the Ilderbaching Chronicles is literally 4 trilogies run back to back. Okay, I just happen to have started writing because of the way things happened. I ended up starting The Birth of the Wolfpack, the last trilogy at the beginning of it. Okay, like the last trilogy is the first one that's coming out. But I did figure out how to link them together. So when I'm taking a look at the different concepts that I'm talking about, the different philosophies of life, okay, every one of them are ones that I live by. And they're the same rules, if you will, the backbone of that series. It's classified science fiction, science fantasy, depending on who you talk to. This one that I just went and got additional printings of, if I can get a hold of it. Oh, that's because it's over there. That's the second one. I like working in series of 12, apparently. This is the second one in the series. This is Believe in Your Business and Follow Your Dreams. But this one here, it's a good thing I got a wide desk. Because I spend a lot of time here. I think I live at this desk on occasion. This book here, Believe in Yourself and Follow Your Dreams, that's the backbone of how I took my life from barely being able to function to being debt-free, able to plan what I'm going after, able to plan upgrades in my home. In the last 2 months, on top of getting debt-free, I've managed to pick up 2 complete computer systems. I've got a third one I'm getting onto, because we're upgrading everything. Okay. Now, the neat part about it is it boils down to this: figuring out what you feel makes you successful. Okay. And what I mean by, success could be anything. Success may be just getting your house in order and having your home run smoothly. That may be your definition of success. And to me, that's a fantastic first step. That's not where I'm ending. Okay. But running a household properly where you don't have the stresses of day-to-day life per se. I mean, you've got to pay your bills and what have you, absolutely. But some people will call that absolute success. For me, that's a stepping stone. Some people will turn around and go, I've got a home, not a home-based, well, or a home-based. I've got a home-based business that's successful. It's running smoothly. Or maybe you run a corner grocery store, a neighborhood grocery store, or a neighborhood restaurant. Okay. And it's running well and doing well. If that's where you see success and that's what your aspirations are, I'm not the one to tell you that's not success. There are many people that will look at you and go, you're only running one restaurant? Or are you ever a pathetic restaurateur? However, if you're happy with it, if your customers are happy with it, if you see that as being successful, that's what matters. Okay. Some people look at it and go, I've got to have all this material stuff. And they become extremely materialistic. Okay. In my case, I became a pack rat. Not because I liked all the junk, but because I didn't want to get rid of it. What if I need it down the road? Well, as it turns out, that became a rather bad setup. And then 2 years ago, I broke that habit. I spent the last 2 years getting rid of stuff, which gives you an idea of how much of the stuff I collected. Right. So you take a look at that and ask yourself, am I successful? And from my standpoint, the easiest way to tell if you're successful, look at the life around you, regardless of what race you are, regardless of where you come from. And yes, I know absolutely for certain that there are some people that are watching this show that are hybrids. Half human, half alien. Or half human, half ancient race. Okay, I know for an absolute certainty they are. Okay, am I going to point out any of them? Not a prayer. But when you're looking at whether you're successful, look in the mirror and ask yourself, am I content with the way my life is going? Now, I can tell you, this figure here, and where it comes to artists, understand something. You never finish these guys. Like, is this one complete as far as I require it? Yes, but if you'll notice, the edge is not completely finished. Okay, I didn't bother getting around it, but the end of it is still white. Okay, because I just didn't end up doing it. Am I content with this particular figure? Yes. Okay. Am I content with this one? Where'd it go? And of course, I can't find them now. They go around all over the place, and I lose track of where they are. But take a look at what you're doing. Are you content with you? If the answer is yes, then you're doing fine. If the answer is no, then it's time to start changing it. It's time to start changing the way you're doing things and alter the path you're on. Now, the easiest trick in the book that I ever found to do that was with this fine little tool. Just found a missing figure. Okay, this list of tasks, I keep it on a sheet of paper. Okay, and as I get them done, I check them off. Where does it start? Well, where it starts is right where you're sitting right now. Okay, take a look in the mirror while you're listening to me, unless, of course, like some of you, you're driving. Okay, if you're driving, for pity's sakes, keep your eyes on the road. Okay, kind of an important thing. But if you're not driving and you've got a sheet of paper handy, grab a sheet of paper, take a look at where you are and where you're sitting, and ask yourself, are you content with the way your immediate area is? Now, in my case, I can look at it and go, well, I've got this figure sitting on my desk. I don't like it there. But I'm not going to get up and go and put it all back as soon as I get off. And well, I will as soon as I get off. But prior to finishing this video, I'll leave it sit there. But you take a look at what your immediate area is and ask yourself, are you content? Okay, are you happy with the way it's laying? And I will tell you, if you've got clutter in your house, anywhere, even if it's in your office, that clutter will slow the energy down. It may lead to depression. It will certainly lead to a feeling of lethargy, as in that get up and go, that drive to get things done, may well be reduced, because when the energy flow is cut, picture what happens when energy to your computer, when electricity is reduced. You have brownouts. You have things in your computer that won't work right. Same thing applies to your home. It doesn't matter what race you are. It doesn't matter how much money you've got. If your home is cluttered, if you've got a bunch of stuff that you don't require, okay, or that isn't serving much purpose, then the odds are it's restricting the flow of energy, and net result, you're likely to have trouble getting moving. Okay. Now, where it comes to the depression side of it, I will tell you, as you get the clutter removed, as I found I did, the first thing I did, okay, I think it was the first step really is deciding you've got to change the way your life is. Now, I will tell you this, the easiest spot to start with is the arteries in your home. And the arteries are your hallways. Get the clutter out of the middle of the floor. If it all gets stacked up on the shelves in the cupboard, it doesn't matter. Okay, like if you've got shelves in your hallway, like these metal shelves here, if everything is on them, just to get it off the floor, get it off the floor, so you can walk down the arteries of your home, so the energy can move down the arteries without any problem. Okay. That is, from my standpoint, you clear out the arteries, everything else can move. Okay. Now, this applies to wherever you are. If you happen to be running a starship, get the hallways, get the arteries of the starship cleared. It doesn't matter if you've got, if you're a multimillionaire. Okay. Millennium, didn't quite see you come in. Spotted the movement when Angels Are Life mentioned you. So welcome aboard. When you're striving to get your life in order, Take a look at where things are sitting. Are you content with the layout? Now you'll notice if you look at my other videos, this shelf up here used to be full of odds and ends and paperwork and what have you. It's all been put away. Okay, it's been put where it belongs, filed in places where it needs to stay, where it's not in my way. And rest assured, that does not necessarily mean it went into this filing cabinet behind me. It actually, because it's old income tax files that were up there, I boxed it and put it out of the way, but I didn't throw it out. You take a look at what's in your immediate vicinity, pick one thing you're not content with, keep it to start with one, and you put it, you break that down into a 15-minute to half-hour job. Okay, by doing that, you'll be able to get things done up. You'll be able to get the tools. You'll be able to get the tasks done so that you can see them. One drawback that I run into, my temperature has a tendency of fluctuating. Fortunately, I've got a window right there. And the problem is, if my temperature fluctuates, all of a sudden I end up getting vertigo. That's no fun, by the way. But you start with 3 jobs. Technically, you start with 1. But put 3 on a list of things right there that you know of. For me, it really boils down to this. As soon as I get done this video, it'll post on its own, it turns out. But I'll turn around and I'll clear the office desk off, the things I've been digging out here. These different figures I've been pulling out. I will put them back in the drawers that they belong in. Okay. Mark them down to 15-minute to half-hour tasks. And the reason for that is because of the fact that in doing that, you can get them tied off and you can feel like you got something accomplished. Now, yesterday was a nightmare for me because I ended up pushing myself way too hard. Okay. And ended up paying for it today. That's part of what my problem is right now. But with that in mind, it finally did open the door and get things happening. Okay. Same thing will apply to you. Okay. If you're not content with the... Oops. If you're not content with the way your life is, you're the one that's going to have to make the changes. I can give you, myself or anyone can give you the guidance and can point you in the right direction. But you're the one that's going to have to do the work. Now, the neat part is when I wrote this book, when I wrote this particular book, the idea was give it and put it in form that is easy to read, that is simple to understand, and that is quick to manipulate. The best tools, or to implement rather, the best tools in the world are 100% useless if you don't use them. Okay. Somebody could give you the best carpentry tools available, and it could be the best of the best. You could be handed the best big rig available on the market. If you never fire it up, it won't do you any good. Okay, if you never pick the tools up, they will not help. Okay, I'm starting tomorrow again. Bear in mind, I'm not perfect. Okay, but I have determined that come heck or high water, I am going to get my left hand working properly to write. I used to write easily with my left hand. Since my stroke, I don't. But I haven't been doing anything with it. And I was almost tempted to just say, scrap it, I'll work with what I've got. Until somebody made a comment. And they looked at me, and they had a stroke as well. And they said, I've reached a point where I'm just going to accept the fact this is the way I am. I am now less of what I was. Right. Now, I got thinking of that for about a nanosecond and went, there is no way I'm giving in to a stroke. Yes, I absolutely had one. It completely screwed things up. I'm quite happy to say that the stroke was not what caused the problem with my leg. But I took a look at that statement and went, there is no way that I am letting this stroke determine what my future looks like, not a snowball's prayer. Now, when I first had it, I couldn't pick up a coffee cup with my left hand again. In case you hadn't noticed, that seems to work quite well at this point. By the way, I still cannot walk and drink a coffee at the same time. I have to stop. Because when I try and walk and drink coffee, I don't know if you've run into this, with a coffee, with a pop, doesn't matter. Right. I don't know about you, but I can't walk and drink at the same time, so I sure shouldn't be drinking and driving. Okay, although it's easier from a mechanical standpoint, it's easier to actually sit in a car and drink. And by the way, when I'm talking about drinking and driving, I am not referring to just alcohol. I see so many people, they say drinking and driving is illegal. And yet you have drive-thrus where you can buy coffee. Now, I'm not entirely certain, but I'm pretty sure the people that consume coffee are actually drinking it. Okay. And if you've got your cup in front of your face, I mean, picture me trying to drive down the road, okay, with this in front of my face. Now, can you see where that might be a bit of a problem to see out the front window? This is what's called a little bit of a sidetrack. About 6 months ago, I was driving along and I saw somebody pull an absolute bizarre stunt. Now, people my age, this would be normal. Okay, you will recognize this thing. The guy could not have been charged with drinking and driving. Okay, because what he had done is he had taken an old style paper map and put it up on the dashboard. And he was looking for a place, obviously, because he's driving along. And every now and again, he'll pull the paper down, the map down so you can see where he's going. And then put it back up to try and figure out where he is. Today's GPS takes that problem out of the equation. But if you're my age, just about to turn 59, or even if you're more importantly, if you're older than I am, you'll remember seeing people like that, or you'll remember doing things like that. Not the wisest idea. But at least you can't be charged with drinking and driving. But this applies to everybody. Everyone that I know, everybody that I know of, every race, they all have these little quirks that they run into. Okay, the neat little problem. The neat little problem. Yeah. Robert goes, unless the GPS is possessed and takes you way off course. Either that or has a coronary. In my case, if I get agitated, the GPS is useless. This is why I won't even consider a pacemaker. I short the poor things out. Just thankfully, I don't short them out in people around me. But every race that I know of, people have the same issue. I mean, it's funnier than heck watching some of these people. They'll go heading off. They're in a hurry and they go racing off to wherever they're intending on getting to. They get there and go, "Why did I come here?" Right? I remember the other day I did that. I opened the fridge door and I'm looking in the fridge, going, "What was I looking for?" Of course, couldn't remember what it was. So you close the fridge, go back to where you were, and then you remember what you were in the fridge for to start with. I'm sure you've gone through this. Every race has the same problem. Every single one of them. They are not, one race is not better than the next. Okay. Yep, no doubt. The neat part about it is people look at other people going, "Oh, you're so backwards, you don't know what's going on." Everybody has the same problem. And when you start looking at the laws in society, you have to realize if these laws do not apply to everybody, okay, especially, and this is really intended for the drivers out there. Picture what would happen if there was not a law that says everybody drive down the same side of the street when you go in that direction. If there are countries they don't have that. Of course, they also have a staggering point more accidents. Okay, but if everybody goes the same direction on the same side of the street, you'll make a lot better time. Okay, but if the laws do not apply to everybody equally, then a sub-society will arise. Okay. And if that sub-society does not have equally designated laws, it too will fracture. You don't believe me? Take a look at the way society is. I love them, and I'm going to pick on a couple of groups here in a sense. I'm actually, in all fairness, only pointing out what I found out on the internet. Christians automatically go, "Are you Christian? If you're Christian, do you believe in this?" What most people don't realize, according to the internet, this will show you how unified they are. Okay, and they talk about greed being a bad thing. Well, let's start with the unification thing. According to the internet, and look this up yourself, there are 45,000 different denominations of Christians. 45,000 of them. Okay. And the Christian churches possess, apparently, according to the internet, 55% of the wealth. They talk about taking care of the poor and the homeless, yet they're hanging on to the massive majority of the wealth. Then you look at the Jewish people, okay, who only have 3 denominations and approximately 1.5% of the wealth. And the Muslims, who only have 2, and according to the internet, only have about 3.5% of the global wealth. Now, when you think about that, we got 55 and 60% of the wealth does not belong to the elite. It belongs to the so-called elite. It belongs to the religious community. These same people that talk about peace, and inevitably people blame them for wars. Well, I'm not going to blame the religious communities for wars. Okay, I'm going to blame individual mentality for striving to solve conflict by violence. Okay, I remember working for a charity years ago called Stop the Violence. And this one gentleman asked me, we were phoning Texas at the time, and he asked me if I was after his guns. He says, "Why do I want your guns?" "Well, you're trying to stop the violence." I said, "True, we are. But here's the thing. Take every single one of your guns, lock them, load them up, cock them carefully and set them gently on the floor or on the coffee table or wherever, and then walk away from them. Leave them sit there. Now, as long as there isn't an earthquake or a fire, have you ever heard of a gun getting up and shooting somebody?" And the guy goes, "Well, no." I said, "So why do I care if you've got guns?" The same thing applies, quite frankly, if you happen to own a car. If you turn the car on, leave it in neutral, and leave the parking brake on, the odds are that thing is not going to go over and run over anybody. It's not going to change lanes without looking. Okay, it's not going to do anything. The person behind it is where the problem is. And that's where the wars are coming from. Okay, but that too can be stopped if we take a look at ourselves. Okay, when you look at your own life, when you look in your heart and go, "Am I content?" The more content you are with your life, the better a partner you're going to be to another person in your life. Okay, the more readily you're going to be able to cope with society. And, if you're ever, in my eyes, lucky enough to run into some of the different races I've run into, okay, some of them are great people. Some of them you look at them and go, your ego could be a little bigger. I thought humans had it. But rest assured, humans are not the only race with an ego. The Drakes have a phenomenal monopoly on that one. They make everybody look like a philanthropist because they look down and they go, "I don't want to control you. I just want to rule everything. Okay, I don't care who the winner is. I just want to rule it all because I'm that good. I'm that special." Even God doesn't want to rule this planet. Contrary to what you may have been told, his interest was give spirits a corporeal way of experiencing life with a minimal set of senses. And then he goes, "Here's all the good things you can have. Here's all the bad things you can have. The choice is yours." Okay, But understand, if you choose the bad thing, you're going to lose all these good things. If you walk back away from the bad things and you come back to all these good things, you can have them all back. They're not destroyed. You just can't reach them. It's kind of like if you're on the main floor of a building. If you go in you've got a staircase to go to the second floor. If you take the staircase to the basement, you can't get directly to the second floor anymore. You're going to have to, at that point, yeah. The neat thing there, Robert says, and no buying Night Industries 2000. You'd have to be watching, I think, and I'm sure Robert or anybody else could confirm this, but I think it was in the late 70s, early 80s, that there was a show called Knight Rider with a car that did its own driving. I love the way that somebody put it the other day. They were talking to me about the issue of these new automated cars. And they said there is no way. Okay. And that's exactly the right point. Millennium just says how you choose to use that freedom is the question, which is very much the case. Regarding these new cars coming out that drive for themselves, okay, it's an absolute great thing. They drive for themselves, but the way this person put it is if you have to buy a car that drives for itself, all it says is you don't know how to drive. And if you don't know how to drive, there's no way I want to get in that car with you. Okay. And I honestly, when it was put to me that way, I'm like, yeah, that makes way more sense. Okay. Some of the old movies, I mean, I look at the number of remakes that are coming out. And, especially when you look at the remakes of some of the science fiction movies. Okay. You're taking a look at them, and a lot of these science fiction movies, they talk about outcomes, they talk about potential problems. There are some of these directors and some of these producers that know what's going on. Like I've been asked what my take is on AI. And I'm like, I really don't worry about them. Primarily because if I get agitated, computers have a heart attack. Kind of works out well if they start going glitchy on me. But you have to look at the way your life is going. My life goes the way that I find is necessary, which is why I'm clearing the clutter out. And I'll tell you, my energy levels are really climbing the more of the clutter I get rid of. The clearer the arteries in my home are. Okay, and to be clear, to be very blunt about it, when I'm talking about the home, the heart of the home is a 3-chamber heart. Your living room, your dining room, and your kitchen. The brain, which is both of the heart and of the home, okay, is your office, wherever you work on your material world. Okay, because you've got to have that in order. Now, intriguingly enough, the off-worlders have exactly the same problem. Granted, they don't use money as humans see it, but they do have a barter system based on that kind of concept. And originally, 90% of them used money. Now, of course, if we go back, and you can check this up yourself, years ago, I found out that the original Sumerian coin was a 6-foot wheel with a hole in the middle of it. Now, I took a look at that and going like, why would you do that? Okay, way too big. Well, the same applies with cattle, which is what used to be used. Cattle and goats used to be used as money. Okay, I personally find that a $20 bill is easier to move than a cow. And now that we're moving into digital, and there is a point for digital money, before you start worrying about, there's no backing to it in gold. Well, there isn't. It's completely made up in a digital world. Okay, but here's the thing. We are already getting off planet, and there is no way that we're going to be moving hundreds of tons of gold off the planet in order to back the money out there. So it's got to go digital. Okay. Am I slowly getting into the 21st century? Yes, I am. Very slowly, but it is happening. Right. And this is where trying to figure things out comes a little bit sketchy. But the fact that I've managed to get it to that point, and the fact that you can, like I said, if you don't know where to start, absolutely ask. Absolutely. The thing is, and the reality there, Carl, is that's why I mentioned when you put this list together, okay, the list that you're working with, keep these tasks to 15-minute to half-hour jobs. Okay, because it's easier to find 15 minutes to do something than it is to find 2 hours, which is why I've only got 2 days right now that I'm going live, because I can guarantee that those 2 hours I can work with. The rest of the time, I'll get started, and I'll be going to do one of my vlogs during the day, and I may get 10 minutes into it and have to pause it, go and do something else, and come back and finish it off. I've done that a few times. I'm getting a little better at it. First couple of times, I go to pause it and stop it cold. Right. Now I figured out how to bypass that. I'm a slow learner, but hey, what the heck? My brother used to tell me, computers are easy. And I had to tell him, they're easy once you know what you're doing. Okay, for me, understanding interstellar travel, the concept of it, is child's play. Okay, there's a neat little interstellar drive that was developed centuries ago that is called the OTE drive. Okay, and that is the backbone of interstellar travel in many of the ships in the consortium. Okay, it's an engine that literally could create free energy. Am I a scientist? Am I able to take that and turn it into that? The answer is no, not in today's world. Do I know how they did it? Absolutely. I've even got the schematics at home for an energy source that actually converts air, water, and heat and solar all under the same bin. Okay. And it turns around and generates its own energy field. Now these are things I've got the schematics for, but I don't have the technical and technological background to put them to use. Okay. Somebody sent me a photo of a piece of equipment one day, asked if I'd ever seen it, and I looked at it and went, well, this is what it is. What it was a part of a matter relocation device, also known as what you would call a transporter. But it's being built on Earth right now. Okay. And yes, that sounds like science fiction, but in all fairness, so did the Philadelphia experiment. That went really neat. Okay. But these technological advances, they're being developed by humans. There is no question that they're being motivated or inspired by things they've seen in nature, by things they've seen in off-worlders. There's no question there at all. I mean, you go back, and I think it was Leonardo da Vinci that developed the helicopter based on the dropping of an oak leaf. Okay, based on the fall path of an oak leaf. So you take a look at nature. Nature has done it very well. Mankind has got this brilliant idea. Oh, let's start creating things. Let's start bringing things back that have gone extinct. Okay, let's crossbreed things and see what we can come up with. Well, picture what would happen if you could figure out how to do it. Now, people joke about cockroaches being able to live through just about anything. Okay, and there's a whole pile of jokes that can come up in all kinds of professions. Okay, but picture what would happen if you take an insect with that kind of intellect and pull a Planet of the Apes stunt on it. In other words, bring its intelligence up to that of a human, which, by the way, in my opinion, ain't really that strong. Most people, the answer there, Carl just pipes up. Anyone have a fire extinguisher at their home? Mine's not actually in my home. Mine's halfway down the hall. But on the other hand, from my standpoint, I was in a house where our house was actually set on fire while I was in it. That was an exciting day. I get the, I'm laying there in bed and I get this bang, 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 bang on the window. I'm like, keep your pants on, I'm coming. And this guy screams through the window. He goes, your house is on fire. I said, fine, I'll put my pants on. Rolled over and shook my wife's shoulder. I said, dear, you might want to get up. Why, what time is it? I said, 3 o'clock in the morning. Why do I want to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning? I says, because the house is on fire. I'll tell you, she came out of bed like a rocket. But we get outside and I look and we started dealing with the fire and I looked at the cop that had woken us up. I says, you know what really ticks me off about this? He looks at me a little strange. He goes, somebody lit your house on fire? I says, no. He says, no. He says, your house is on fire. I says, well, technically it's not my house. I says, but no, the thing that ticks me off is that whoever the wingnut was that lit it didn't tell me about it before they did so I could get the wieners out of the freezer. And he looks at me and he goes, you're worried about the wieners in the freezer and your house is on fire. I said, well, it's a total waste of a good fire. Right. So he was a little confused by that. But this is the way I've looked at the material world my entire life. Okay. Up until the last 6 months. And then I finally went, I'm stuck here. So I'm going to take on an attitude of the character that is in this book. Neat part about it is the main character in this book, Jeremiah Woolstrand, is the character I built. And when I first built that character, I made a comment. He was built for a gaming system called Aftermath. And when I first built him, I made a comment to the game master. And I says, look, the world's gone to hell in a handbasket. I did not ask for this, so I'm going to have the best of the best. And every time I turned around in that game, that was what he was going after. Well, I finally got it through my head that that's what I should be looking at. It doesn't matter what the outside of my house, of my apartment looks like, as long as it's acceptable. But what does matter, and I'm finally in a financial position to do it, now I can go after the things that I personally desire. Okay. Yeah, Robert's got here. Or marshmallows regarding the fire, which is true, except I don't like fire cooked marshmallows. Now, Rice Krispie squares, on the other hand, those I like. But I finally reached a point in my life, and you can as well, and that's the important factor here. Everything I do, you can do as well. I believe the best way I ever heard it put was, all that I do, thou shalt do, and more. And the neat part about it is, I came from being bankrupt, from having a reasonable flow of money, to being bankrupt, to being on the edge of poverty my entire life. And now I'm at a point where I'm literally looking at replacing the stuff that is working with the stuff I desire. Now, here's the thing. In the next year to year and a half, I have 6 bookshelves that I've got right now. They're working fine. I will be replacing them with oak because I personally like oak. Not because I need new bookshelves. But those bookshelves, they're still perfectly fine. And I will find people that require them, that they can use them. I won't bother selling them. I bought them. They've had their use. I've got my use out of them. I will simply turn them over to somebody else, and they can have the use out of them. To me, this is the way charity works. And I'm a firm believer in helping people out. Okay. Quite often I've done it to my own detriment. Just a few years ago, with that in mind, I finished paying off a recliner. It was working perfectly. But just so happened there was a gentleman moving into my neighborhood. He just left his wife. And I just asked him point blank, I says, do you have a use for a recliner? In perfectly good shape, but it's going. Do you have a use for it? He goes, yeah, but how much did you want for it? I said, I want room on my living room floor. So it went out the door, right? Brand new recliner, only a year old. Went out the door. Didn't cost me and didn't cost the guy I gave it to anything. For me, this is the way charity works. You give whatever you can if you're not crippling yourself in the process. And this is why when I talk about profit sharing in business, profit sharing is net profit. Be true to yourself first. Take care of your own obligations before trying to take care of everybody else. Okay. I can look in the mirror today and I go, I'm in better shape, better health now than I was 15 years ago. Okay, and the funny part about it, I was supposed to get blood work done here. And I kept putting it off. And it needed to be done at least 2 days before my doctor's appointment. Well, here's the thing. The doctor's appointment is on the 20th. Therefore, the blood work would have to be done by the 18th. The 18th is tomorrow. But the 18th, all the labs will be shut down, so I can't do it. So I guess in a sense, I postponed it long enough I don't have to do it. I wasn't planning on doing what the doctor said anyway. Okay, now that said, I do the same thing when I look at what the government does. If it's not legally required, if it is a law, follow the thing. It's not worth the headaches not to. Okay, when we take a look at some of the off-world races, okay, they follow the laws they're supposed to, or they have problems as well. Net result, you end up with civil wars. Okay, but from my standpoint, I strongly encourage you. Governments are necessary to run. Okay, no matter what the situation, no matter whether you agree with them or not. Overthrowing a government, all that does is create chaos until another one steps into play. And there's an old saying that goes, better the devil you know than the one you don't. Now, from my end, it's simple. Again, you take a look at that second law. Be true to yourself, do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Okay, meaning, if you set a law up in your own home, you expect other people to follow it. If you set up a law in your own truck, you expect people to follow it. Okay, well, if that's the case, then you must, by definition, follow, by example, follow the laws that other people put in place. Now, I'm not the one to say whether you're living your life right or not. The only thing I will caution you is if you're not following the 3 karmic laws, the odds are you're creating complications for yourself. Not because of the fact that I'm telling you you're doing something wrong, but because the side effect of the way energy works is what will determine that. Okay. So, all in all, it's a question of putting your feet on the ground in the right fashion. Okay. And it's going to take time to get things organized. Okay. Yeah, Carl's making a comment. Talk about my cooking, Mr. Andrews. I baked a New York cheesecake Sunday with the help from a professional chef baker. And that's just it. The reason I think Carl sent that is he sent me a picture. I'll tell you, the food that he makes looks fantastic. Do I have the ability at this point to replicate it? Not yet, but I'm going to give it a try. And I'm laying odds that if it shows up anything like my cooking does, normally cooking for me doesn't work out well. My ex actually sent something over, sent some extra food over for me. I opened it up. I took one look at it, and this will give you an idea of my level of sophistication there, Carl. I opened this container up and I looked at it and I went, I could see the rice and I could see the broccoli, but there was something else there. And I looked at it and I looked at my son and I said, what, pray tell, is that? Right. I couldn't even recognize the thing. And he turns around and looks at me and goes, Dad, that's whitefish. I said, oh, okay. Because I didn't recognize it at all. But then the problem I run into where it comes to the cooking side of things is I don't track space and I don't track time well. Well, if you can't do those two, I'll tell you, the trip into the kitchen is a nightmare. Okay. But I am doing my best. I have decided I'm going to do what I can to improve that side of things. Mind you, my motivation is a little bit different than most of the time. It's not because of the fact that I figure cooking is a fantastic thing that I'd like to get into. But since I do have a partner that lives in another country right now, that we are planning on bringing up north of the border, and in time getting married, I should be able to at least provide a functional meal aside from what I can order. Okay, so there's my motivation for learning. And the reality is, it doesn't matter what you're learning, what you're figuring out. Okay. Whatever it is, you might think it comes to your mind first. And it may, but the reality of it is, until you get that heartfelt imperative, changing what you're doing is going to be problematic. It can be done, but it's likely to be more difficult. Now, the reality of it is, one of the big things I'm going to ask you guys about, considering you're here. Yeah, that was sort of, Robert says mine was Max didn't cook, so I had to learn quickly. Well, I learned how to cook enough that I can keep my son alive. I kept both my boys alive for years. Right. This doesn't mean I'm a good cook. It just means I'm functional, that I'll survive. But I mean, my father, when my mother moved out of her marital home into my dad's home, into their marital home, um, you know, my dad and my mom could only cook 10 types of porridge and toast. That was it. Right. She became one of the best cooks I'd ever run into. Of course, I'm a little biased in that regard. But you find the motivation, whatever works for you. Like I've told many parents when the kids are going to school because, well, they're chasing a girl or chasing a boy into school. It's like, who cares what gets them into the education? As long as they get educated. Whatever gets them started, let it go. Doesn't really matter. What does matter is if they're following the 3 karmic laws. Okay. Now, I'm going to ask a very important question from my standpoint, because I'd like to make these live streams more enjoyable for people. But if you've got a topic, and next week I've already got one lined up, and I forget, my apologies, but I forget who suggested it. But I would like to know the topics you would like to actually discuss. Either have me bring up the information on, as far as I understand it. The one topic that was brought up last week, or was brought up, try English, was that I was asked about, was to go into a little more in depth into the hybridization program. Now, that's the one, and so there's that already on the table. Okay, I will be looking at other things, not the least of which, and I'm gonna throw a wrench in people's life, because sooner or later I'm going to tangle the issue of the similarities between the religions and just how they've gone off track from what I've seen. Now, understand, my memories, I've got memories of past lives that date back centuries. Okay, so am I here to prove to you one way or the other? The answer is no. What I'm going to do is open topics up that will make people question, will undoubtedly make people unhappy, because I will question a lot of things. Okay, but if you've got a topic that you would like to hear, that you'd like to find out about, absolutely drop me a line, either in the comments, below this, straight into the data stream, because I go back through the chat line before I shut the system off. So if you've got any topic that you'd like to look at, I know one of my pet peeves, and I know this applies to many people, it's one of the reasons I don't drive a lot, is the way that people absolutely ignore the rules of the road. And I mean, the rules of the road really are common sense in most cases. Okay. We can take a look at all sorts of things, whether it's a metaphysical thing. Okay, one of the topics I know of, and it's going to throw people on edge. Okay, but I had to redesign astrology and numerology. Okay, first one to hit the deck here is some info on Atlantis. And there's some real interesting things that are not written in the books. Okay, but, and here you go, this is where we go. Like I said, because the other question was asked first. Where are we here? I will have those figures ready for the 24th. I just got to double check and see what date that is. And I can tell you right now, while we're still on the air, that'll be the 24th, the next weekend, which is 24th. So that said, on the 24th, next weekend, I will be taking a look at the hybridization. Okay. Just making a note for myself. That'll be on the 24th. So therefore, when we take a look at the calendar here, then we have the 1st of May, which we will be discussing. We will take a look at, as Nightmare has asked, we will take a look at Atlantis. Now understand something very important here. There's a lot of people that have done all kinds of research. I work off memory. Okay. And, Carl's absolutely right. It's not how we start off in life, it's how it ends that matters. That's very much the case. Something else to keep in mind. Okay, there is a saying that man is not judged by the height to which he grows, to which he climbs, so much as by the depth from which he has climbed. In my case, I've gone from being extremely reclusive, hiding from everybody, and I do mean that literally, okay, being bankrupt, living on the edge of poverty, to a point where I can now look in the mirror and go, yeah, I definitely have an odd outlook on life. I absolutely have a twisted outlook. Okay. But with that in mind, I can sit here and go, this is me. I don't have to try and be somebody I'm not. People ask why don't you use a call name? Well, in all fairness, the reason I don't use a call name is because I keep having trouble remembering everybody else. So I figure I might just well stick with my name. Then I don't have to remember who you're talking to. And if I say something that upsets somebody, then so be it. I probably shouldn't have said it, or they should have heard it differently. And somehow I get lost as to which one's more important. But the reality is that you cannot control the way other people respond. You can only control the way you personally respond. And respond to their responses. That's all you've got to work with. Okay. I was actually offered there was a company in Hollywood that offered to tell my story. And they sent me a contract. I looked at them and I went, either this is a really stupid joke or you guys are completely off your nut, because there is no way I'm signing this contract. They literally wrote in the contract, and I've got the contract here. They literally wrote in it that they could fictionalize, alter, modify anything they pleased. That was put in the second paragraph. In the third paragraph, they literally wrote that they were legally entitled to breach the contract. Okay, and they couldn't figure out why I wouldn't sign this thing. Well, my story is twisted, and as we're going along, as you've seen with some of what I've talked about if you've been watching my YouTube channel, then I've covered a number of odd things about it. But when I tell people I'm willing to answer virtually any question, there are some questions I'll just tell you flat out I'm not answering. Okay. One of the obvious ones is I don't talk to people. I don't give names out of people that I know. I'm not what you would classify as a name dropper. I'm certainly not a professional actor, although in all fairness, I did spend time working in an amateur theater company behind the scenes, and in high school, I did end up on stage. But I'm just me. If you ever run into me in person, you'll find I talk exactly the same way, drink pretty much as much coffee if I've got the opportunity. And, if I'm sitting still, the odds are my hands are probably going in all directions, but what the heck? But the way I talk, the way I double back on my words, as in I'll go, I can do that. I'm just not going to. But the whole idea of coming on, and then I came to the conclusion of going live is to help people remember who they are. What I mean by remember, is we have to go back to the whole concept of soulmates, which reminds me. Let's see, Atlantis, I think I had that set for the 1st. Just want to make sure I get dates right. On the 1st, I'll deal with Atlantis. Just to give a heads up, on the weekend of the 8th, I will be dealing with soulmates. And I will tell you, it is not likely what you're expecting. Okay, because from what I've seen, from what I've witnessed, from the people I've talked to about soulmates, it is not as simplistic as what people are thinking. So I will deal with that. I had to get an idea to get a little more organized, and this is just how I do it. So what I do is I come down with the topics, and if you've got a topic you'd like to discuss, or that you'd like to have brought out in the open, absolutely let me know. I'm getting some great ideas here. Okay. I get great ideas from people, and I'm very open to discussing pretty much whatever. Okay. But the reality is that this video stream will only be really good if I've got the interest of the people listening in, which is where you come in. You're the people that are listening. You're the ones that have the questions and that are aware that I'm here. Now, the best questions in the world, if they're never voiced, will not be answered. The best tools, if they're not picked up, will not be of any use. Okay. Now, this little pendant, yes, I wear a pendant. As a matter of fact, I wear a second ring with it. Okay. Okay. That one I keep with me. Like any jewelry that I'm wearing pretty much has some sort of meaning to it. This particular ring comes from my brother. Okay, now I didn't get it from him until I paid the ultimate price, or more to the point, he did. In order for me to get this ring, and it's just stainless, it's sterling silver, because plate I can't wear. Right. But it's sterling silver and malachite. Right. But the reason I say he had to pay the ultimate price, before I got this ring, he ended up passing away. Right. Which is how I got the ring. But it's the only ring I wear at this point. Eventually, you'll find one on this hand. Okay. Because I've already decided that the young lass that sent me both this pendant and the ring that's here. Okay. And this ring here that I'm wearing, that I've got, I can't take it off right now because it's a pain in the neck. But that is a ring from the Lord of the Rings. That's the one ring. Now, like I've mentioned before, J.R.R. Tolkien, The Hobbit, was the first book I ever read that I found was almost impossible for me to put down. It's not what motivated me to write the story I did. That was a whole different issue. But it is the one that got me reading. Now, again, from my stand, it boils down to this. Okay. We take things one step at a time. And if you've got a topic, if you drop me a line, if you've got a topic, I will simply add it to my list. But because I'm doing these one weekend at a time, that way, because there's some people on the other side of the world. So this is why I decided I do the one live feed on Sunday night, and the other one I do on Saturday morning. But I'll cover the same topic both days, because there are questions that people are going to miss from the other side of the world. Now, of course, because I'm doing Saturday first, needless to say, the people on the other side of the world will get the first input. But the fact they're on the other side, understand I'll be starting at 8 o'clock in the morning here. Okay. That way they can come online. Okay. That way, 8 o'clock here is because I've got to be awake. I cannot do it at 10 o'clock at night because of my schedule. There's no way I can do it at night on Saturday because my schedule's screwy. But Saturday morning I can do it. And you're more than welcome for that, Robert. In all fairness, it was when I realized where you were that really brought it home that, the fact is, the other side of the world, people are in a strange time. So I had to accommodate. I can't, obviously I can't do it at the perfect time for everybody. And karmic law number 1, you must be true to you first. So I had to find a time that fit my schedule before I could ever get to the other side. Okay, to anybody else's schedule. But the reality of this live feed is it's to help people remember where they came from, what kind of power they really have, because, there was a commercial series out it was just a short thing out, I think, in the 70s and 80s again, that was just little shorts that talked about people having power over their own life. That is what I returned here to do, is remind people that working together, we can make this a better world, and that you have the ability to do it. You just may need a little guidance to point out how to pull it off. Where to start. Well, where to start is right where we are. Okay. Which is why I'm looking for a name to use in the way of advertising to let people know that we're coming online. Okay. And I'm playing with one concept, remembering who you are. Okay. Or remembering who and what you are. I'm not entirely certain. This is something that's in the works. If you've got a suggestion, absolutely drop me a line. Let me know. Okay. Because it boils down to, like, I know when I go to broadcast, when I go to talk about the vlogs I do, I simply call them the journey. And where that started was at how I started things out and where I was going. And hoping that would inspire people to change their own life. In this case, I'm encompassing the whole thing because it's all interconnected. And the more you understand about what you're capable of, okay, the more readily you're going to be able to succeed in life to your standards. Now, I'm working on I'm writing 32 or 33 books right now. Okay. One of which is designed to show you exactly how to make minimal money work for you. Okay, if you don't have $30,000-$40,000 to play with, how do you play with that? How do you work with that $5 that you got, or that $3 that you've got? Now, in all fairness, the more money you have, the faster you can make it. This is just a matter of numbers. Okay, but there is no reason on the planet that you can't use the same techniques. And I look at the techniques for the guy that doesn't make a lot of money. Okay, the one that is what is usually qualified as the working poor, or the people stuck on social services because they're not shown how to get past it. Okay, these same techniques that work for those people will work for the multimillionaires. And I know this because I've sat down with financial advisors that do it for a living and have asked me how I survive on what I do. Well, the reason being, it was put to me one day really clearly that if you cannot explain what you're doing in simplest terms, you don't know it well enough. Okay. Well, I learned how to explain things in real simple terms. The problem is I didn't learn modern science. Okay, I got thrown out of modern science in grade 8, and modern biology for that matter. Okay, but I learned how to explain what I'm looking at in simple terms, which is why when I turned around and explained to a person with a master's in rocketry and astrophysics how the OTE drive worked, she just looked at me dumbfounded going, "How much education do you have?" I says, "Well, the answer to that is simple. I managed to successfully fail college, but I did learn how to think." Okay, at least I like to think so. Of course, the biggest challenge I've ever run into is how do I get my other foot in my mouth? Because getting my first foot in there seems to be child's play. But if you've got ideas, Carl's just asked, do you believe that numbers play an important part of our past, present, and future? The answer is yes, which comes to an interesting topic. So I guess, Carl, that boils down to, and sorry, it's going to be a bit down the road, because we are now into the 4th week. Okay, but we will discuss what people know as numerology. Okay, and the answer to your question, though, is very much the case of, what works. Do numbers have a point? The answer is definitively yes. Okay, everything vibrates at a different level. But there's a very definitive pattern. Now, in a nutshell, and this is why it's going to get a little screwy on that one. When you look at numerology, what you'll read is what I call base 10 numerology. Okay, and I will go into this in far more detail, but the numerology I work with is base 12. Okay, but I've got that set up here. That will be a month down the road here. So, what day is that? That will be the first. That'll be the weekend of the 8th. Okay, of the 7th and 8th that I will deal with, then the 7th and 8th of May. Now, of course, the following weekend, and I will be on. Okay, I've already decided this. Friday the 13th is actually my 59th birthday. So I haven't decided what I'm going to be discussing that weekend. And mind you, haven't come up with any, we haven't got a suggestion at this point. But I will be, even though that's my birthday, I will be going online at that point. Now, unfortunately, Carl, I have no idea. What Carl's done is Chaldean. And in all fairness, I probably pronounced that wrong. I do not know who that is or what version that is. Because like I said, I am not researched. I'm a very poorly read English major. So I really do not know what the Chaldean is. I take it that's a type of numerology, or that's the normal call of it. Okay, but that one I can't give you an answer for. Like I said, I'll be honest. If I know something, I'll give you an answer. If I don't, I won't. But with that said, we are now down to the tail end here. And I'm going to call it a night because we've hit the 2-hour mark. I will be back on again next week, and throughout the week I will still be doing the vlogs. Okay. If you look at the bottom of my videos, if you look at the bottom of my videos, it tells you how to get a hold of me. Okay. And I will be more than happy to be in touch. Okay. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other. And for pity's sakes, we'll try that again. For pity's sakes, stay positive and have yourselves a good night, guys. Thanks so much for joining me once again.